Hi there, my name is Rabbi Sam Feinsmith of the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, and I'm glad to be accompanying you this evening as we prepare for Kabbalat Shabbat through a little meditative journey. Our session this evening is called Putting Down Our Fists, Opening the Heart, Relaxing into What Is. And I'll be sharing my screen because we're going to be looking at a couple of classical sources, and then we'll spend some time in meditation. Bear with me for one moment as I pull up our source sheet. So we've turned first to Kabbalat Shabbat with Psalm 95, the first psalm that we recite, Lechu Niranana. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's often hard to transition into Shabbat on a dime. It's not like I can come home after a week of working, of applying effort, of striving, of trying to meet deadlines and achieve this, that, or the other, and just transition into a different mode of consciousness and being that is more attuned with Shabbat, the day of rest. And the instructions for how we might actually make that transition more skillfully are actually embedded in the prayer itself, within Psalm 95 itself, which states, Al takshu leravchem ki meriva. Do not harden your hearts as at Meribah. Of course, Meribah was a specific place in the Bible where the people who were very thirsty in the desert asked Moses for water. And Moses was told to speak to the rock, and instead Moses hit the rock in order to bring forth water. During that process, he also spoke ill of the Jewish people, called them rebellious, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, as a result, lost the opportunity to enter into the land of Israel as the leader of the Jewish people. And in instructing us not to harden our hearts as we did at Merivah, we also might point to the fact that the word Merivah also means a quarrel, which is why the place received that name, because the people of Israel quarreled with Moses and with God. And so we can also understand this line as suggesting, don't harden your heart as if you're in a fight, as if you're in a quarrel. During the weekday, there's so much to get done. There's so much to achieve. And we may find ourselves striving to such an extent that we actually end up in a quarrel with ourselves and with the reality in which we find ourselves. Tensing up, hardening, tightening, becoming reactive, just as Moses was with the people. And so the question is, how can we actually soften our hearts as we enter into Shabbat? And to help us with that work, we turn now to a teaching of Rabbi Yehuda Leib Alter of Ger, known affectionately as the Sfat Emet, after the name of the book of his teachings, which were published posthumously by his sons in 1905. And he got up in front of his Hasidim on Shabbat during the festivals and would give over sermons. And then his students would actually commit them to memory, write them down on Saturday night, and bring them to him for any comments or edits and so on and so forth. And this particular homily comes from Rosh Chodesh Mar Cheshvan, the beginning of the month of Cheshvan, from 1872, which happened to coincide with Shabbat Noach, the story of the flood. And here says Rabbi Yehuda Leib Alter of Ger, do you want to know what observing Shabbat is supposed to feel like? He says the Holy Sabbath is like Noah's Ark. When we're resting in a Shabbat state of mind and Shabbat consciousness, it's actually supposed to feel like we're ensconced in a protective shelter from the storms of our lives, a kind of sanctuary in time, as Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel called it. And he goes on to explain why we need this kind of a sanctuary. For we are all preoccupied with worldly business during the week. Like during the week, we're trying to get everything done. We're striving, we're running, we're trying to achieve, we're checking things off the to-do list. And in some ways, we're kind of in a quarrel against time, right? Against deadlines, against all kinds of other dimensions of our being. And it's likely that as that happens, and as we try to change and bend reality, that we ourselves might harden and tense up. So he says during the Holy Sabbath, there's enough spaciousness to retreat and let go of our preoccupations in order to take refuge under the shade of the wings of the Shekhinah, that is the loving divine presence, which spreads a Sukkot Shalom, a shelter of peace over us. On Shabbat, because we actively let go of our weekday habits, for some of us, that might mean turning off technology in our phones. It might mean stepping away from our work. It might mean not driving. For others, it may look very different, right? But what we need to do, says the Sfat Emet, is something to let go and find more spaciousness so that we can find ourselves ensconced by, embraced by, supported and protected by a loving quality of transcendent presence that feels like a mother giving us a big hug, which then spreads over us a shelter of peace, Sukkot Shalom. And here we find another allusion to the liturgy from Friday night, where we ask God, Ufros aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, spread over us the shelter of your love, of your peace. Says the Sfat Emet, this is like Noah, who was hidden away in the ark, an act of bitul, which literally means nullification, but in the Hasidic tradition connotes ego surrender to the divine root of our chayut, our vital life force. And so Shabbat, says our teacher, it's kind of like Noah's ark. Right? We can find this sanctuary in time by letting go, cultivating a bit more spaciousness, and finding ourselves protected from the storms of our lives by actually surrendering some of the ego's desire to try and reshape and control and mold the world according to its wishes and aspirations. And how do we do so, he says? We need to, as it were, relax into the divine root of our chayut, of our life force. Of course, where is it that we feel alive? Right? Where is it that we sense this life force coming into us moment by moment by moment as a gift given freely by the whole universe? It's in the body. It's in sensation in the body, in the rising and falling of our breath, in the sensation of sitting here and now on the chair or the cushion, and the sensation of aliveness coursing through our nervous system. So says the Sfat Emet, throughout the week we might be up here in our heads trying to plan and control and so on and so forth. But on Shabbat, we try to actually rest our attention, relax our attention into the body, which itself allows for a kind of surrender of the ego into the root of its vital force. He continues, for the whole world was being destroyed and needed to receive new vitality from the root of life, and so too every Holy Sabbath. When it feels like the floodwaters are upon us and the world is about to be destroyed, when everything feels like it's falling apart in our lives, our tendency automatically, reflexively might be to try and get busy, to try and put up our fists, to try and strive and achieve and overpower and power through. Says the Sfat Emet, actually during those moments, what we need most is to receive new vitality from the root of life, lest we completely exhaust ourselves or find ourselves in a state of compassion fatigue or create more division, hatred, and isolation in the world. And he goes on to say, this is something we can do every Holy Shabbat. So as we enter into this Holy Shabbat with this amazing, rich, beautiful community of sacred spirit and soul, I want to invite us through meditation practice to do exactly what the Sfat Emet suggests, which is to surrender into the root of our vitality, to actually let go of the thinking mind, the ego mind, the planning mind, the striving mind, the adversarial mind. Instead, just to trust that if we relax our attention fully into the body, into the sensation of being enlivened moment by moment by moment, we might come into contact with something much more powerful, much more transcendent, much more restorative than anything we could possibly experience through the ego mind. Just to put a little bit of icing on this cake, so to speak, we turn to Barbara Brightman in her book, in her article rather, Spiritual Transformation, a Psycho-Spiritual Perspective on Jewish Narratives of Journey, where she teaches that the relationship between the weekday and Shabbat has a lot to do with the tension or balance between effort and effortlessness, willfulness and willingness. Willfulness involves the assertion of the individual to achieve personal mastery and autonomy. It involves the effort to plan, strategize, even attempt to control and negotiate the complexities of living through assertion of the individual will over the mystery of life. And in my experience, when I do that, my heart hardens. I become tense and tight. And I fall into this kind of dualistic way of being. On the other hand, says Barbara Brightman, willingness involves a receptive attitude or stance, a letting go, an opening to the mystery, or in the words of the Kutzker Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutsk, one of the famous Polish Hasidic teachers, letting God in. Rather than striving for the autonomy of the separate self, an attitude of willingness enables us to realize our rootedness in God and relatedness in creation. So let's take a time now to cultivate some willingness instead of willfulness, to put down our fists, open the heart, and relax into the root of our vitality. I want to invite you to close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or you can keep them open, whichever feels more sustaining and safe. If you keep them open, you can allow your eyes to rest just slightly ahead on something indiscriminate, a soft gaze, perhaps at the floor or at a surface. And just notice at first, is there any tension or tightness in the body when I find myself striving against what is, trying to one up the reality of here and now through my effort, through my desire, through my willpower, I tend to tense up. And so we can just notice if that's what's been happening for us by checking out certain parts of the body where we normally hold tension. For some of us, that might be in the forehead or the brow. For some of us, that may be in the muscles behind the eyes, in the cheeks, or in the jaw. And you can simply take a deep breath in, let go, release all of the striving with the out breath. If you'd like, you can even extend these out breaths and make them longer, deeper, taking a couple of ocean breaths. You might even begin to bring your attention down into your hands. So many of us do so much work at the computer, clicking, typing. It's possible that the hands are already bracing for what comes next, preparing to grab onto something, move something, change something, achieve something. See if you can allow instead all the muscles in the hands to simply release and soften on the out breath. Breathing in awareness into the hands, breathing out tension, tightness, holding, striving, clenching. And you can repeat this process if you notice tension anywhere else in the body, in the shoulders, in the abdomen, in the legs, or in the feet. With each in-breath, we become a little bit more aware of what's transpiring in the body, and with each out-breath, we let go a little bit more, soften a little bit more, let down our guard a little bit more, and surrender in trust that we can take one day out of the week to just be. The world won't fall apart, and to the contrary, we may be able to gain enough energy and perspective to go back into our work of world shaping and world repair with greater clarity, balance, vitality, and love. So when you feel ready, you can find an anchor for your attention, and that might be the rising and falling of your breath. Wherever you feel it prominently in your body, that could be in the abdomen, in the rib cage, or in the nostrils. Or alternatively, perhaps in the rising and falling of sound, or in the sensations that accompany the feeling of contact between your body and its support, be it a chair, a cushion, the floor, a mat. Whatever you focus on, make sure it feels like a safe home base. A place where you can simply relax your whole being into the flow of sensation with awareness, moment by moment by moment. And without really exerting much effort at all, we allow whatever arises on the level of sensation to just come, be known, and witnessed, and pass away. We let go of the striving. We let go of the need to achieve anything. And we let go of the need to willfully fight against the truth that right here and now we are being vitalized somehow mysteriously by this great web of life. And of course, your mind will wander off. You'll get lost in thinking, planning, striving, trying to achieve or change this or that reality. Of course, this isn't a problem. This is just a habit. As Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi taught, our mind is like marinade. Our mind is like tofu. It takes on the flavor of whatever we soak it in. It's no surprise that after a week of working and striving and trying to achieve and push our way forward, the mind still wants to control of this, that, or the other. You can just notice what that feels like, whether it causes any tension in the body, any constriction in the heart, any dulling of our awareness. And we can let go. If you'd like to, you can place a hand on your heart and say to yourself, don't harden your heart as if you're in a quarrel. Remind your heart that it's safe to let go, to relax. And gently but persistently return your attention to your anchor in the body. Every time you do this, you're adding a plank to your inner arc, your inner Shabbat sanctuary. As we come to the closure of this meditation session, and as we turn toward the Kabbalat Shabbat prayers, psalms, hymns, the beautiful nigunim, the melodies, and our prayer together in community, may we all merit to feel the deep peace and release and freedom of Shabbat deep down in every fiber of our being. Thanks for undertaking this little journey with me. And may you and yours be healthy, peaceful, and free. Shabbat Shalom.